Hello YouTube. I usually don't make videos, but I felt that it's probably a good idea to maybe help out some people with using self-leveling compound for the first time to avoid issues that I definitely ran into when I put it down. Basically, the salesperson just told me off the start that all I had to do was basically put it down on the floor and just let it do its thing. Like what they kind of fail to tell you is how necessary like it is to just make sure that you're using in the right application. I'm using a larger format 24 by 24 tiles, so basically the floor has to be extremely level. I spoke with the MAPE people like a few times about the application of it, and the first thing that you have to realize is that like after you do all the drywall work in the basement, you're gonna have like a ton of, how do I put it, like just like the mud that they use like all over the floor. And in my case, the builder for the home had asked me if I wanted to get the floor painted to reduce the amount of dust. I said yes, not even thinking about it. So the problem is that when you tile, the thin set and the mortar doesn't adhere very well to the paint. So what I had to do, and what you might have to do if you want to do the tile in the basement, is to rent what's called a concrete grinder. And they are fairly expensive to rent, just so you know. Like, and you want to get one that can get really close to the edges. And when you use that angle grinder, it'll say that it'll work on 15 amps, but it's probably better to run an extension cord up from the kitchen on the 20 amp breaker, because I noticed that when I hooked it up to the regular plugs that I have going on, that they really, how do I put it? The breaker was tripping quite consistently with just it being such a high-powered machine. You also do want to rent like a very, very high-powered vacuum cleaner. Like, I'm sure even on my walls you can see that they're all still dusty. This is honestly completely unavoidable if you have to completely grind up all of the cement. So like it shouldn't be too bad to wash it off the walls, but what my point is that you're gonna want to definitely get a respirator. Definitely don't use an N95 if you have to grind up the concrete. The silica in the concrete is fine enough to go through an N95, which is weird because even viruses can't go through an N95. It's such a fine powder that it will go through that N95 mask. So you're gonna want to wear a respirator. And when you're grinding it, like, you don't have to take a lot of it off, but the things that I would definitely recommend, especially if you're doing the construction, have some like leftover vapor barrier. Excuse the mess, as it's still in construction, but I would have definitely put some vapor barrier all the way down here, as well as like maybe like my under the stairs, and then also in my utility room, because it gets crazy dusty, and that dust gets into all the machinery. The other thing you really want to do too before you grind up the concrete is turn off the furnace during the application time, so it doesn't you don't have that fine dust kind of going through the blower motor for your furnace. And it's not a bad idea to even block off any of the heating, the return vents that are going to the furnace, so when it does start up you don't get any of that fine dust inside of the furnace. I have heard of those motors going within like 3 months after they get a lot of dust in them, so just make sure that you take care of that. So once I had the entire thing kind of, how do I put this, after I completely ground up all the concrete, I put self-leveling compound down on the entire basement floor. I didn't turn on the lights, I apologize for that, but when you put down, first of all, when I talked to the guy who, the MAPE rep, the MAPE is a company who sells the concrete, I might even be saying it wrong, but what he was saying is that when you do the tiling, like when you put down the self-leveling compound, and if you spread it out like way too much, what happens is you're not actually stopping any of the leveling from happening. When you spread it out too thinly, then it doesn't have any ability to self-level, because you basically like spread it out so thin that it's just going to basically go on top of whatever imperfections that you do have, and then kind of just stay as like a layer on top of it. The other thing too is, if you don't have any issues with the level of the basement, don't put down self-leveling compound. Like, what you want to do, this is what I did. I don't know, like, I'm sure some people might disagree with me on this, but I went around with a nice like 4-foot level, and like I just went around the entire basement after I had done this, and just make sure that it's level. If it's level, like within like 1/8 of an inch, which is actually quite substantial if you think about it in terms of like the levelness of the concrete floor, don't worry about it, because like, especially if you're using the large format tiles, they recommend that you use a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch trowel, like this one right here. So if you think about that, a small like 1/8 inch or 1/8 of an inch imperfection is going to get filled in, or not filled in by it, but it won't have the same impact as if you're using less. So if there's no issue, don't put it down. Now, I had put it down, and the problem, the other thing that they don't tell you with the self-leveling compound is the manufacturer specifications for the amount of water. I cannot stress this enough. When you put it down, and because for the 50-pound bags, this is what the bags look like right here. So with the 50-pound bags, they recommend between 4.7 and 5 liters per 50-pound pail. Now, like, as a chemist, I understand why they would give that recommendation, because like it's going to basically, like, the space in between the particles is going to be at kind of an optimal level for the strength of the compound. But the thing is that they're thinking of that in terms of an industrial application. They're not thinking about that more in terms of a residential application. Now, it isn't about, thinning, like, I'm definitely not saying like go crazy with it. If it says like 5 liters, I'm not saying go like 6, because then it's just going to create a very weak cement. But when you use it at 5, which is even the maximum for their recommendations, what happens is, if you look at the corners here, there's a little bit of a lip. And what happens is, if you go between that 4.7 and 5, this lip, like the one I showed you right now, that's maybe like a 1/16 of an inch. But if you put it down with, if you put it down at 5 liters,